Okay, I want to talk about cycling across the country. And my first trip, I'm going to focus on the first trip because the second trip was actually a combination of two trips. The first trip, we started right outside New York. I think it was Fort Lee, New Jersey, ending in Seattle. And so I started with my friend, Sam, who was awesome. He ended his journey in Minneapolis. So I was on my own from Minneapolis, and I'll share some of the interesting details. So, I trained a lot for that trip. I really did. But I can tell you, I don't think there's a way to train for a trip like that for somebody, who's a non-cyclist. Both my body as well as Sam's body were literally in shock at the beginning of that trip. I'm like, oh my God, this is. And one reason we were in shock is because we were so like I'm going to say I was stupid. I had sweatpants and three pairs of shoes and all this. And like, you don't take sweatpants in the middle of the summer on a cross country bike tour, and you don't take three pairs of shoes. It doesn't make any sense. Take your bike shoes and, you can have another pair of shoes. I think flip flops is what I would do nowadays. Uh, but, back in I didn't wear flip flops all the time like I do today. Flip flops are really good. And I just had so much crap. I mean, and I couldn't lift my bike. It was that ridiculous. I was like, are the bikes made to carry this much weight? They're not. They weren't. I toasted my rear wheel somewhere in New York. But it just, somewhere in New York after toasting the rear wheel, it was like, I don't think we need all this crap. And so I sent most of the stuff back home. It was just crazy. I mean, I brought like the kitchen sink with me on a cross country bike tour where you don't want to carry a sink with you. It was just absurd how much nonsense, both myself and Sam. I can't speak on his behalf. I think he agrees with the assessment that he brought too much stuff, but I can speak about myself, and I was way over the top. But we just didn't know. We were young, unwise. At this point, I bring nothing. If you need something, you just get it. You don't have to bring stuff. If you need something, you get the stuff. Makes it simple. I brought tools. I brought spokes with me. It's like, oh my God. At that point in my life, I didn't even know how to rebuild a wheel. So I don't know what the spokes are going to do. You get the spokes. What are you going to do with it? I don't know. But I had all these tools. It's like people have tools. You just stop and get the tools at a bike shop. Didn't make sense. Anyway, so we decided to go up the Hudson River, like on a bike, not like, I mean, we were biking because the Hudson was, flat. So we assumed the roads would be flat instead of going diagonal across the state of New York. And he made that conclusion. He was, essentially, I guess, not the cartographer. I think cartographers make maps, but he was the route planner, for that trip until he left. Then it became my job. But anyway, so it was kind of cool that instead of going diagonal, which would have been shorter, he concluded that the mountains were going to be pretty serious and we weren't really ready for that. And I would agree. So we went along the Hudson, and it was, it was hilly and stuff, but it was okay. And then we went across the Erie Canal, went to Albany and across the Erie Canal. And it was pretty hilly. And I remember we wanted to get on the highway, right? Because we were along the highway the whole time. But like the highway was much flatter. The roads we were on were going up and down quite a bit. We could see the highway was like flat. We were like going alongside. We're like, let's get on the highway. It was illegal, so it didn't work out. I think we tried once, just didn't work out. And it just eventually we made it to Niagara Falls, and Niagara Falls was a nice little break day. I remember we went 99 point like or 97 miles that day, and Sam was like, we should just ride around the parking lot to get to 100. I was like, not fast. No big deal. So we didn't we never did 100 miles on that trip. And then from there, we went across Canada, which was really cool because it was nothing in Canada. I mean, it was really, really nice. I mean, I remember we stayed in London, which was a beautiful downtown. And we stayed at like the classiest hotel of my life in London. Got some kind of crazy good deal because, biking across the country, somebody hooked us up. It was downtown, just a beautiful, they had a water park is my recollection. It was just a really nice little situation. And it kind of was just beautiful. It was like really desolate, and then in these nice little towns here and there throughout. So it was really cool. And then we went to Port Huron. And that's when the nonsense started. First of all, like when we, got to Michigan, it was raining, like, and I mean, it was raining all the time. I think because it was situated to two Great Lakes. But we were definitely riding in more rain than we encountered like up until then. And it was nonstop rain. It was really crap, you know. But it was really weird. The Michigan drivers were the worst drivers I've ever seen. I don't mean anything against, please, if I go to Michigan, don't try to run me over. But it was really tough. I mean, literally, this hyper aggressive stuff consistently. So we had to take very serious precautions in Michigan, which we never did previous. We just didn't have to worry about any of that stuff going on before. But yeah, the drivers were really, really tough. And I remember we went through like 3 prison towns in Michigan too, which was kind of weird, you know, because when people get out of prisons, they stay in the prison town. So it's really weird, you know. So you go to a restaurant or you go, you know, everybody there is from the prison. Very strange dynamics. It was interesting. I mean, it wasn't negative, it was just different, right? And eventually we took the ferry across, you know, the Great Lake to Green Bay, Wisconsin. And I was blown away. The Green Bay was like, I think at the time it was smaller than Bensalem, Pennsylvania, which was my hometown, which I kind of grew up. And Bensalem was not a big town, but Green Bay was smaller, you know, at that time. I think now it's way smaller. I think Bensalem is blown up and Green Bay is probably a lot bigger, but not that much bigger. So yeah, Bensalem has a casino. So Bensalem is like big time. Anyway, um, I was blown away that a professional football team lives in the smallest town I could ever imagine, literally. Wisconsin was just awesome though. Like everybody there was so friendly, so nice. It was just sweet, is what I would say. And especially the transfer from Michigan, where everyone tries to run you over. The minute you hit Wisconsin, everybody tries to help you out, you know. So it was really cool. So I really fell in love with Wisconsin. We saw some ski slopes, which I didn't know were up there, but it obviously makes sense they're up there. And then, you know, eventually got to Minneapolis. And I remember there was a really cool waterfall somewhere along there. You know, I think in, going over into Minnesota. And it was weird because you had to bike pretty far to get these beautiful things, like Niagara Falls was obviously beautiful, and I don't even remember all the stuff, but I just remember we needed a bike a lot to go from one beautiful natural phenomenon to the next. And just for clarity, that wasn't the case in the South. In the South, it's like boom, 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 boom. You get like 5 men a day. It's unbelievable. I mean, New Mexico, I do believe is special in that context, west of Albuquerque. But yeah, no, so then hit Minneapolis, which was a neat town. I mean, kind of wild weather out there. I'll say that. It was a massive summer storm. So, but really nice. Everybody was so friendly. And then it was cool. Well, actually from there I went on my own, and my goal was to make it through fast. So I tore it up in Minnesota. I was like, let's go. And I remember the first day I was on my own, it was raining. So it was minimal friction. I really make some time in light rain, really light rain, not heavy rain. And so yeah, I flew through Minnesota. I think I made it in 3 days, like complete, like might have been less. I was flying. And then I remember I hit South Dakota, and I remember looking at my legs and like, what's going on? Like, couldn't make any progress. The wind is just so big from morning till night. It kind of sucks. It just does. So no big deal. But yeah, it was a real dredge. Just the people were the nicest I've ever met when you hit the Midwest and the prairie starts, in the middle of South Dakota. So the prairie is like, for me, it was sacred because I didn't see any people from there until I got out of the prairie. It was just cows. You see farmers once in a while asking for water, but there was nobody. I mean, it was nothing. It was the most desolate place. I can honestly say I could hear myself think because there was nothing around, and I mean, I was on the highway, but there were no cars. There were no cars on the highway ever. I mean, it was just ever. It's really interesting. And, towns had population of, like under 100. Yeah, this town has this population. It's like, okay, you had to go like 20 miles for a town so you can, get food, water, and stuff like that, generally. And hotels. I mean, one time I had to ride real far with the wind. It was like, I mean, that kind of wind when you're going like 8 miles per hour, on average, it's kind of tough. But I remember I rode like 9 hours, 33 minutes one day to get to a hotel. And after that day, I kind of was finished for like many days. But in South Dakota, I made it to this hotel late at night, after 9 hours, 33. When I mean 9 hours, 33, that means that was cycling time. The front wheel was rotating for that amount of time. That means I was like, actively riding and resting, for like over 12, well, I'd say in the ballpark of 12 hours. You take breaks, lunch break, this break, that break. You always stop for water, take a little break. But I was actually on the bike cycling for 9 hours, 33 minutes, which is in a day, it's insane. That's a little much, I would say. And after that day, I kind of blew up for a while. I really had to take some time, to get everything back in order. Went through North Dakota, and there are Black Hills in the northwest corner of North Dakota that no one knows about. Everybody knows the Black Hills in South Dakota, but they're, and when I say no one knows about it, I mean literally nobody knows about it. It's kind of cool. It's like the biggest secret. So there are no tourists. If you want Black Hills and you want to see them on your own, you go to northwest corner of North Dakota. And then eventually, Montana is really, really good people in Montana. Just, that's all I'm going to say. I mean, some of the nicest people I've ever met were from Montana, most generous, gracious, hardest working, very thankful, all kinds. And, you have different parts of Montana, Eastern, Western, they're really good people. I stopped in Yellowstone, which was kind of wild. I don't know that I could recommend cycling in Yellowstone in the summer, because everybody that goes to Yellowstone, I mean, not everybody, but a huge percentage are in RVs that are just oversized, and they're all in a rush. So I almost got run over so many times in Yellowstone. I was like, this is crazy, it's just crazy, crazy. It wasn't that great of a situation to be in Yellowstone. Like, it was more traumatic in multiple ways than you can imagine. The first night in Yellowstone, I camped out in August. Okay, it was, I mean, it was August. It was early August. And so August is usually, quote unquote, warm, hot. It's a warmish month. So I'm camping out. I didn't have a tent or anything because I got rid of everything. I just had a mosquito net, in a sleeping bag. And there was dew so all this moisture got on my sleeping bag and me. And mind you, I only had like 2 pairs of shorts, maybe, give it 3. I had no pants, no real shirts. I mean, I had nothing. Okay, I had a sleeping bag and shorts, It's really, really, really weird. And all this dew came onto me, as the temperature dropped, which is no big deal. It's like, okay, so it's a little wet right now. No, what are you going to do? But then the temperature continued to drop. It got below freezing in August, okay, in Yellowstone. And I'm like, come on, people. Like, let's get for real here. You know what I mean? This is some crap, okay? I'm not down with this. And then everybody started trying to run me over with these RVs. I'm like, and they can't control them. I mean, I drove RVs. I know the lack of control. Like, these people are just weaving as fast as possible because they're going both ways. And I'm on the road and they're just trying to, not waiting for me in the car to pass. It's crazy, crazy. So it's really dangerous. So if you're a cyclist, I don't know about Yellowstone in all seriousness. I wasn't too worried about bears and wildlife. I know they're out there. Like, I figure I can get some speed. At that point, I was pretty fast. I assumed I could. I mean, I was able to outbike dogs, like athletic dogs, at that point fairly easily. There are a few tactics you can use, but I figure I could get away from a bear. Maybe I couldn't, but I thought I could. So no big deal. But I didn't find it to be dangerous. I did see some wildlife out there, which was kind of cool. Early in the morning only, stuff was grazing. But yeah, it was just, it was a horrible situation. The one cool thing is the way out of Yellowstone on the southwest corner is one of the windiest places in America. And I mean, it's for real windy. And it's funny because the wind dominates from the south. Yay! Right. I saw a couple of cyclists come in from the north right there, and I felt bad for them because they were working as hard as anyone could work and they weren't making any progress. And I'm just sitting here kicking back, not doing anything, and I'm flying out. I mean, it was like crazy. I mean, the wind must have been at least 20 mile per hour consistently. I think it was like the third windiest place in the country, supposedly. It was unbelievable. I was averaging like upwards of 14, if not 15 miles per hour without even pedaling. It was like, I'm just flying out of this place. It's kind of cool. Then, essentially made it, through Idaho in a heartbeat. I mean, it was all downhill at that point, is my recollection. I just flew through Idaho. It was no big deal. And, only saw pickup trucks for the longest time, like working cars, And then eventually I get to Spokane, and it was weird. It was weird. BMWs, Mercedes, you get convertibles. I'm like, oh my God. It was really weird. It was like, it's just strange for me. It was like, I was kind of shell shocked. I didn't see those cars for so long. And the people, it's different people, different energy. It's really weird energy. It's really weird. Kind of really shocked me a little bit. I wasn't really cool with it. And yeah, and it rained a lot in Washington. The cool thing is that the Cascades were like under the mountains when I was going into Seattle. The clouds were under the mountains, the Cascades. And it was really pretty. Really, I mean, really pretty. It's just special. Seeing things like that, it's like, whoa, didn't really know that was even possible. And it's really cool. It's not only possible, it happened, and I was there. Getting to Seattle, I made a video about bike on the highway. It was one of the most traumatic things in my life. And I mean, I'm probably going to cry about this a little bit, but in a desperate effort to try to make it into Seattle earlier, I took the shortest path, which was the highway path, which is illegal and all that nonsense. It's really wrong. But it was getting dark. I didn't have lights. Didn't have much of a choice. Is the way I saw it. And I had a choice. I chose the bad path. And I'm on the highway, and all these cars are going 55 and up on my left. No problem. I'm cool with it. I've been doing it for over a month, in the Midwest. But then, Seattle's different outside. Like I don't know that this was around Seattle. Yeah, this was right outside Seattle. A highway dumped off on my right side, which I was completely oblivious to because I'm like Rinky Dinkin, like just putzing around biking. And all of a sudden I have this highway on my left and this highway on my right. And, so I'm right in the middle. And it's funny because, they have the reflectors separating the two highways, and I have to ride like on these reflectors, which like eventually I lost my balance on the bike because I'm like terrified, panicking. And, when you have cars going 55 on both sides of you on the highway, holy crap. And, you're young, and there's nothing, you can't turn around, because if you turn around, the car's going to hit the bike. I mean, I had a very narrow path, and my path was full of obstacles, these reflectors. And I'm like, I don't know how long I can do this. I'm like, this isn't going to work out for me. I'm like, oh my God, it's like a cow being sent into for slaughter. I had to go forward, but I knew like the highway was getting closer and closer. It was closing in on me. I couldn't turn around. I'm like, oh boy, this is a bad situation. It's like, I need some help because I can't do this one on my own. And at that moment, a cop pulled me over. And literally as he did that, I kind of fell down from hitting the reflectors on the pavement because I was so panicking, so nervous. And And the bike was heavy, with junk, and I wanted to hug him. I'm kind of tearing up a little bit. I just said, thank you. Just thank you. It's like really, because it came out of nowhere. I didn't see a cop for so long. I mean, in the Midwest, there's like, you're never going to see a cop, there's nothing to do. It's all farmers, ranchers. They don't need police. And just at the moment I was going to just be run over, he comes and he pulls me over, like as I fall down on the highway. It's unbelievable. I was like, that. He's like, what are you doing here? you know? And he knew something was going on because normally people don't like go for a short bike ride with the crap I was bringing. I brought some serious stuff with me. you know he's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm biking across the country trying to make it to Seattle. He's like, but why are you here? Why are you in the middle of the highway, literally? And I said, I didn't know. And he knew I didn't know, because no normal human being would enter that, knowingly. You have to be an idiot. Like, so I'm an idiot unknowingly, not as opposed to knowingly. And he took me over to the side, the shoulder. He's like, you just get off here, get on that road, and we'll find a way. I was like, all right. And eventually I made it to Seattle, and all the hotels were booked because that's what people do at the end of the summer on weekends. It was a weekend. They go on vacation. And I ended up staying at a homeless shelter that night. And it's funny because I stayed at a homeless shelter in Billings, Montana, just randomly. Somebody offered, you want to stay there? Yeah, sure. And I remember giving my wallet with everything I had to one of the workers there to hold while I took a shower. It was all my possessions. And when I was done my shower, I got everything back. And the worker was not a worker. He was a homeless guy. Everybody at the homeless shelter in Billings, Montana was really awesome, just like myself and everybody else, just down their luck for a little bit. They were going to be fine. So I love homeless shelters after my experience at Billings. I was like, this is a really great situation. Actually, they're doing the community a huge service. Some people took advantage of the system, but most people were like really nice. I remember I talked to a fisherman who taught me about fishing. He was an expert, and he was going to be fine. I was like, he was good. And then I went to the homeless shelter in Seattle. That was a little bit different. Literally everybody was strung out on drugs, alcohol. Everybody was just wasted. It was a scary, scary situation. I mean, generally, I'm not too scared, but I can tell you, I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is not a homeless shelter. This is just like a homeless shelter is a place that helps people in need to get back on their feet. Those people were not going back on their feet. There was something wrong at that shelter. It was not even closely connected. It had the same name as a shelter in Billings, but it was not the same. The people in Billings were all going to be fine. The people in Seattle were not going to be okay, right? Only the title, homeless shelter, was the same. It was not the same. It was sad place. Yeah, it turns out I was in Seattle for 3 days, and it was a funny situation because like all the hotels were booked, but while I was at the homeless shelter, they hooked me up with like a halfway house that I could pay, like, when people get out of, like, they go. So I paid. It was like a hotel. For me, it was a hotel. I actually paid. It wasn't that cheap. It was like downtown, is my recollection, downtown Seattle. But it was, I mean, I had a room, for a couple of days, but it was weird because everybody could come in and out. So you couldn't leave anything in the room. No one's going to take the bike because the bike weighed like 50 pounds. And honestly, the bike went with me. And it was really funny though. I remember, like, by the time I got to Seattle, I was different. When I left on the trip, I was like young, weak, doubted my ability. When I got to Seattle, I was one badass cyclist. I mean, I could bike. I biked across the country. My legs were normal when I left. when I got to Seattle, my legs were like a horse, like a Clyde. They were so thick. They were, and it was like a phenomenal power in those legs. And I remember, so I'm there and, screwing around. And, I'm carrying my stuff because I'm staying at a halfway house. So you can't, so my bike's a lot heavier than most other people that are cycling around Seattle. And then they're telling me, you can't be running red lights because it's like jaywalking. They'll give you a ticket. Like on a bike, you can't. I'm like, well, they have to catch me to give me a ticket. I don't think any of these police officers on bikes, even with a much lighter bike. So actually, I was egging a few. I went through a lot of red lights just for fun. I was hoping someone would try to chase me down. No one tried. I think they saw the bike. They're like, that guy's not a local. He doesn't live here. I didn't take my sleeping bag and stuff with me, but I took most of my possessions on a daily basis so they wouldn't disappear. Just pretty much the deal. And then, and that was it. That was kind of the end of the story. Took the train back. It's a 3-day trip. And I have to tell you, the trains on Amtrak, on the East Coast to Chicago, they suck. I mean, they just, they're horrible. It's just a train. It's just a car. You don't have to drive, so it's nice, but it really does suck. You take a train on the West Coast past Chicago, it's kind of a nice little situation right there. They have these, cars, these display, I don't know, they're glass and all this stuff. You could see everything, just hang out, make a lot of friends. It's really a good little situation. I mean, really, really nice situation. So if you're looking for a train ride, don't go up and down the East Coast. Like, New York to DC is like the worst train ride ever. I mean, you see, going high speed and seeing this stuff. You hardly see anything in these small windows. But on the West Coast, it's really sweet, I have to admit. If you're going to take a train ride, I think I hear, they have a route from California up north to Washington that's really scenic. Sure it is. But also just going west of Chicago is just beautiful as well. Highly recommend that as a train ride for a family, a group, just to hang out, see something different. It was fun. I definitely appreciate it. And went back to Philly and did my biking thing from then on, right? So eventually started the down tube. It all stemmed from that trip. It's kind of unbelievable. Thank you for watching.